So it seems like a lot of exciting games are headed to Nintendo Switch 2 at or around launch, not just from a first-party Nintendo perspective, which we still have to wait to learn about a lot of what Nintendo has planned for this console, because they're keeping things extremely tight-lipped until that April 2nd Nintendo Switch 2 Focus Direct that we know to expect. But you may remember in prior videos on the channel, we've discussed at length various different major publishers within the industry, like EA, Square Enix, Microsoft, amongst others, all having some of their heads and leadership kind of go out there and be excited about Switch 2 in interviews, and or in some cases outright just pledge their support to the console. There is a whole large list of third-party rumored games that may be headed to the platform, but today we have once again a new update around this situation and the level of game support we will see from the largest game publishing studio in the world as of 2024, if you can believe that, which is none other than Microsoft, following their massive acquisition strategy that they've of course have expanded rapidly over previous years, with mainly the Bethesda and Microsoft Activision Blizzard King merger that all has effectively closed and went through for them. And they are now shifting their strategy to a multi-platform strategy, not relying on exclusives to sell their consoles, but rather trying to take large revenue share cuts. And today I want to highlight some direct comments from the Xbox Game Studio current head around their multi-platform strategy, and specifically name dropping Switch 2 and which games that are rumored are most likely to come over within the launch year or shortly there afterwards for Nintendo Switch 2, and just have a fun deep dive conversation overall on just how much software we will likely have to look forward to on this platform once it finally launches. So we'll get on the same page with all of this info. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off by hopping over to Nintendo Life, where they do have the following write-up with exactly what was said from the current Xbox Studio game head, which reads: Xbox head excited about Switch 2 and multi-platform releases. It's good to have our games reach more places. Xbox has shifted to a new strategy where it's bringing more first-party IP to other platforms, including Nintendo's devices. We've already heard from Phil Spencer how the plan is to support Switch 2 when it arrives, and now Xbox Game Studio head Craig Duncan has elaborated on the company's multi-platform approach going forward. Speaking during an Xbox Game Studio update, Duncan mentioned how cool it was to see the Switch 2 announcement and how he's always curious and excited about what Nintendo can do. On the subject of Xbox games coming to other platforms, he believes it's a win-win for gamers and his teams. The exact quote reads, "I think it's good for gamers, it's good for our studios. Our studios make amazing games and we want to give those games a chance to reach the broadest audience possible. So even I think back to when I had my studio head Sea of Thieves hat on, having Sea of Thieves reach multiple platforms, being able to remove barriers so those players could play together. I think it's just good for gamers. It's good to have our games reach more places." Last year, Xbox kicked off this new strategy with 4 games, including Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, Pentiment, and Grounded. In more recent times, it's also announced a number of new releases for PlayStation, including Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, Age of Mythology Retold, and Forza Horizon 5. Following its acquisition of Activision Blizzard, Microsoft has done a deal to revive Call of Duty on Nintendo platforms. So while once upon a time at Xbox, it seemed like we were hearing certain messaging from Phil Spencer and then other messaging from Satya Nadella and the top brass at Microsoft, and it didn't really seem like their messaging was 100% in sync with each other, we're now seeing on multiple fronts, from Satya Nadella on down, the Microsoft CEO head, all the way through Phil Spencer and now through Craig Duncan in this interview, they're not hiding the fact that they're bringing their games to every platform nowadays. And I think it's going to be more of a question of what first-party published Microsoft game isn't going multi-platform as opposed to which ones are. Now, there's going to be some transition period to get all of these ports up and ready for Nintendo Switch 2 and even PS5, as we're seeing multiple Xbox projects announced but not necessarily released for PlayStation 5 currently. I think all of those games personally that have already been announced for PlayStation 5 will just find their way to Switch, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle being a prime candidate for that. I think we're just going to learn about a Switch port potentially as soon as the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. I actually think that Microsoft probably has a pretty large presence at that event overall, or shortly thereafterward, we will just see the floodgates open with numerous different game announcements that they could not confirm or reveal up to that point in time. And to remind you guys of some of the rumored titles that are headed to Switch 2 and PS5 that haven't been confirmed yet, there are a number of outstanding ones, one of them coming from a very reliable source by the name of Vandal, a publication that really doesn't just report on anything. They have inside sources and tend to be correct when they put articles out there. And you can see this tweet as a reminder from Stealth over on Twitter, which says, Starfield, Fable, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and Killer Instinct, all slated to come to PlayStation 5 and Switch 2. Various other rumors like Diablo 4, Fallout 4, Halo the Master Chief Collection, and even Forza Horizon 5, all slated to come to Nintendo Switch 2 from different sources. I think these are the type of games that get confirmed pretty early on. Likely Sea of Thieves being thrown in that conversation as well. I would say Hi-Fi Rush, but that studio, they basically got sold off by Microsoft. That maybe they still have the rights, maybe they don't. Maybe Microsoft brings that game over. That one seems like a tricky project maybe nowadays with all of the red tape around it. But regardless, a ton of floodgates open, Microsoft support, even with Nintendo over Sony, because I know Microsoft at this point is bringing their games to Sony as well. But if you just look at the history between Microsoft and Nintendo and their good working relationship together, I really think that there's going to be full-fledged support day one and onward for Switch 2. And we already know that their juggernaut game Call of Duty has a guaranteed 10-year run on Nintendo platforms, because that is an inked deal that's already signed by all parties involved and official, that for 10 years Call of Duty will be supported on Nintendo platforms going forward. And then to add some fun into the conversation with a game that will also come to Nintendo Switch 1 apparently, but I believe we'll be getting a Switch 2 version, and that I personally am very excited for as somebody who grew up as a lifelong fan of this franchise. You can see this article over from VGC, which says Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4 has been rated in Singapore. The much teased skateboarding game has been rated. Now the article continues to detail like it's coming to everything: Nintendo Switch, PC, PS5, PS4, Xbox One, and Xbox Series consoles. But not only have we seen interviews with direct teases that people say they're in the game, we've also seen direct promotional material teased in Call of Duty where it says 3/4/25, and even Tony Hawk himself in photo shoots now with 3/4/25. Obviously 3/4 March 4th, and being the reference to 3/4 remastered, and they have a direct logo that they're promoting for it. So the cat's out of the bag on this one. We know it's 3/4 remaster. That could be coming around the launch time of Nintendo Switch 2, funnily enough, because I do believe that it will be announced on March 4th, but likely not stealth dropped without any kind of promotion. I think that they will just have some kind of 2 to 4 month turnaround before they launch it, which would put it right in the line of potentially launching around the Switch 2, because we are expecting that console to be out in May or June at some point. So 1+2 remastered, already playable and enjoyable on the current family of Switch consoles, but I am hoping that if 3/4 remastered gets announced, maybe it's only initially confirmed for Switch 1, but we find out that there's a Switch 2 version day and date when it does launch. So that way you can just get it with the enhanced visuals and frame rate and all of the lighting effects. I'm going to want to pick that up for Switch 2 if at all possible, day and date, and can't wait to replay. I loved 1 and 2, don't get me wrong. 2 is probably one of the best Tony Hawk games of all time, but 3 and 4 are up there as well. I mean, super enjoyable. I'm just hoping we get Underground 1 and 2 remastered next, and then we really have all the back catalog that I care about, and they can go on to creating brand new Tony Hawk experiences. But this was another one of those cool things to see come back to Microsoft, because there was some talk from Activision Blizzard like they were really the ones that shut this down, and Microsoft acquiring them is kind of what potentially brought these plans back in motion. Phil Spencer kind of name dropping this before in the past, that maybe franchises like Tony Hawk and even Guitar Hero might make a return one day. So I'm excited to see this come to fruition, and I do think that this is just one of many Xbox titles that is already confirmed for support for Nintendo Switch, but we're going to have all these other games hit Switch 2, and that's going to be an exciting day once we can officially talk about what's coming. We see the pre-order pages go up, we see how the performance of these games really works on Switch 2, which is going to, of course, be a hot button issue, but that's where I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. What, if any, games that Microsoft is clearly bringing to all platforms, including Switch 2, are you most excited to see? Are you going to be picking up this Tony Hawk 3+4 remaster, and do you have any level of hype for that franchise like I do? Are there any other games like Diablo 4, Fable, Starfield, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Killer Instinct, any of the other games mentioned that you're very hyped to potentially play on Nintendo Switch 2? And do you think there are any games that are off limits that won't make it over, or is it just pretty much all of the first-party Microsoft games catalog is going multi-platform from here on out? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.